Good evening. Or good morning, depending on where you're reading this from. I'm writing with a tight knot in my stomach. I've spent hours going back and forth about whether I should share any of this at all. But after watching that second video yesterday, the one where Savannah Guthrie says, "We will pay," in that calm, deliberate voice that nearly breaks but never quite does, I realized I couldn't keep what I learned to myself any longer. This is not gossip. It isn't a blind item or a rumor slipped into my direct messages. What I'm about to recount comes from a 45-minute private conversation that Al Roker had with 3 people he deeply trusts within NBC. There were no cameras, no recording devices, no written notes. Phones were left outside the room. I personally know one of the 3 people present. I spoke with them late last night and again this morning, February 8th, 2026. To the best of my knowledge, what follows reflects exactly what Al said in that room. And yes, it directly explains why Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is affecting Savannah in a way that feels different from any other public family crisis we've witnessed. Al Roker turned 71 last August. He has been part of NBC longer than many of us have been alive. He's watched anchors rise and fall, scandals erupt and fade, careers soar and collapse. More importantly, he has shared makeup trailers, early morning production meetings, and countless plaza-side huddles with Savannah for well over a decade on The Today Show. People often forget how close the Today cast truly becomes behind the scenes. They aren't merely coworkers. When you begin your workday at 3:30 a.m., 5 days a week, year after year, the faces you see before your own family wakes up become a second home. Al has witnessed Savannah's evolution. From a new legal correspondent who seemed almost surprised to be on national television to co-anchor. He saw her marry, become a mother, endure a highly public divorce, rebuild her life, remarry, raise her children, grieve losses, celebrate awards, and weather ratings battles. Through it all, he says, she maintained the same outward demeanor, warm, polished, steady. Until now. Al told the 3 people in that private room something that reportedly stunned them. He said he had never seen her look like this. Not during her divorce, not after personal losses, not even on contentious election nights when the country's anger was directed at her. This time, he said, the fear is different. It's the fear of failing the one person whose opinion has always mattered most. And that person is not a colleague or a former co-anchor. It is Nancy Guthrie. Then he said something that prompted one of the attendees to message me immediately afterward. Savannah has spent her entire adult life trying to demonstrate to her mother that she is strong enough, intelligent enough, capable enough. And right now, she believes that if she cannot bring Nancy home safely, swiftly, and flawlessly, she will have failed the only test that ever truly counted in her mother's eyes. That sentence explains everything about how Savannah appears on camera. It doesn't explain the investigation or the ransom notes. It explains her posture. Chin lifted, voice steady even when trembling, words carefully selected as if etched in stone. There are no dramatic breakdowns, no public wailing. Only controlled, precise, determined resolve. Al said he recognized that posture the moment he saw the February 4th video. He believes she is doing exactly what Nancy taught her to do in moments of crisis. Stand tall, speak clearly, do not reveal vulnerability. She is delivering what he called the performance of her life because she still believes that is what her mother expects. Even now, even when Nancy is the one in danger. He shared a memory from roughly 8 years ago. Savannah had just returned from maternity leave after her daughter Vale was born. She was exhausted, juggling pumping sessions between segments, determined to prove she could perform at the same level as before motherhood. One morning she entered makeup looking like she hadn't slept in days. Al asked if she was okay. She gave him a familiar smile, the one that means don't press further, and quietly said her mother had called the night before to ask whether she was certain she could still manage her demanding job now that she had 2 children. She laughed when she repeated it, but it was not a joyful laugh. It was the kind that masks tears. In that moment, Al realized that no matter how many awards she wins or how many millions tune in, part of Savannah still waits to hear her mother say, "You're doing great." According to Al, Nancy's calls were rarely about praise. They were framed as concern. Are you sleeping, eating, balancing family? Staying sharp on air. Loving, yes. But always accompanied by an invisible measuring stick. Nancy raised 3 children alone after losing her husband young. She had no room for softness. She became steel and expected her children to do the same. Savannah internalized that lesson completely. She became disciplined, prepared, unflappable. But the cost, Al said, is that she never learned how to ask for help without feeling like she's failing. Now, 8 days into the most devastating crisis of her life, she must do the one thing she was taught never to do: publicly plead for her mother's life. Al reportedly watched the February 7th "We Will Pay" video repeatedly. Each time Savannah says, "We are ready to listen," he hears the young girl who once feared disappointing her mother with a B+ instead of an A. Each time she says, "Stay strong," she echoes Nancy's own words to her during childhood illnesses and setbacks. She is trying to sustain her mother with the same resilience that was demanded of her. Someone asked whether Nancy is still holding her to that standard even now. Al paused before answering. He said he believes Nancy raised a daughter so thoroughly conditioned that even in unimaginable circumstances, Savannah feels compelled to solve this without breaking down. At one point, someone reportedly had to leave the room in tears. Al himself did not cry, but his voice broke when he spoke about Savannah's lack of sleep since February 1st, and about his fear that if Nancy does not return soon, Savannah may never forgive herself. He urged people to rewatch the February 7th video, to observe her posture, her squared shoulders, her steady composure. Is that the stance of someone who feels safe enough to collapse? Or someone who still hears her mother's voice instructing her to hold firm? Al believes what we are witnessing is not just a daughter trying to rescue her mother. It is a daughter attempting to prove she is still worthy of love, even when she cannot fix everything perfectly. He did not give an official interview. He did not go on air. He spoke privately because he felt the public narrative overlooked the human being at the center of this ordeal. The person who shared this account with me has nothing to gain and much to lose by speaking. They believed the truth mattered. Al also shared stories from Savannah's childhood. About an 11-year-old devastated by a B+ because her mother expected better. About a valedictorian speech where she didn't mention her mother first and later felt compelled to apologize. About college exhaustion dismissed with the message that rest comes after achievement. He described this not as isolated strictness, but as a lifelong operating system. He spoke of Annie and Cameron experiencing similar expectations. Different reactions, but the same core rule: do not show weakness, solve your problems, do not burden others. "Mom wouldn't want that" has reportedly become a refrain in the past 8 days. Al believes this explains the family's composure. The absence of emotional outbursts, the careful wording, the restraint. They are not composed because they feel strong. They are composed because falling apart would feel like betrayal. He recalled quiet moments at NBC when Savannah would make brief remarks about her mother's standards. After difficult interviews, during her divorce, after ratings dips. Always measuring herself against Nancy's reaction. Al once viewed it as tough love that fueled excellence. Now he wonders whether it prevents her from allowing herself to be vulnerable when she needs it most. In part 3 of the conversation, Al reportedly spoke with raw concern. He said that, while the discipline made Savannah exceptional at her job, it left her little experience with vulnerability. And vulnerability is now unavoidable. When asked whether she fears failing Nancy more than losing her, Al reportedly answered that to her, the two are intertwined. If Nancy dies, she will not only lose her mother, but lose her final opportunity to prove her worth. He fears that if this ends tragically, Savannah may carry lifelong guilt, not just grief. He also suggested that the family's composure may subtly influence public perception and even investigative dynamics. Not through conspiracy, but through human psychology. Their restraint projects calm control rather than desperation. That, he noted, is learned behavior. Al made clear he was not criticizing them. He was observing that they were raised in a system where breaking down was not permitted. And now they are trapped within it at the moment when emotional release might be most natural. He ended the conversation by explaining why he chose to speak, even privately. He said he has watched Savannah carry too much alone for too long. If sharing this helps even one person understand her, pray harder, share information more widely, or call in a tip, then it is worth any backlash. He is 71, he reportedly said, and has nothing left to prove. Savannah, however, has everything to lose. Where does that leave us tonight? We do not know what the next deadline will bring. Proof of life, another demand, or silence. We do not know how long Nancy can endure without medication. We do not know how long Savannah can keep her composure intact. But we do know this: the woman millions watch every morning is not simply a seasoned anchor under pressure. She is a daughter who has spent decades striving to earn approval. And she believes that if she cannot bring her mother home safely and flawlessly, she will have failed the one test that mattered most. That is not mere strength. That is anguish. So revisit those videos. Look again. See not just the anchor, but the child still living by inherited rules. Pray not only for Nancy's safety, but for Savannah's heart. That whatever the outcome, she may one day believe she is enough, even without perfection. Al Roker did not have to say any of this. He could have remained silent. He chose not to because sometimes love requires speaking an uncomfortable truth. Bring Nancy home. And may Savannah finally feel safe enough to break, and safe enough to be rebuilt. That is all for now. If news emerges tomorrow, hopeful, devastating, or silent, I will return. Until then, hold her name in your thoughts. Keep sharing. Keep hoping. And remember that behind every carefully delivered sentence stands a daughter still trying to make her mother proud, even now.